Children are priority number one for the Methodist Church in Brazil. The project Shade and Fresh Water was organized as a national network to help local churches develop educational activities for children and teenagers as an alternative to the street in situations of risk. Local churches are challenged to organize extracurricular activities for children and teenagers between 6 and 14 years of age. These activities contribute to their physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and spiritual development. The primary goal is to form the character and values of the children and teenagers, and to offer them better conditions of life, enabling their development as people and citizens.
O sentimento é de pertença, não é sentimento mais.
When children come to our projects, they arrive missing many things. Very soon they feel part of something. They are no longer alone in the world. Here, someone cares and values them. This feeling of belonging is critical to their psychological and spiritual development. It helps structure their lives because they feel valued and a part of a group. Shade and Fresh Water is a seed that God placed in our hands to transform our neighborhoods.
The name Shade and Fresh Water comes from a popular saying that reflects people's desire for relief and new life. The project wants to offer to children and teenagers at risk a place of protection, nourishment, and new life. The teachers are volunteers that receive training and material to develop activities in Christian education, tutoring, sports and recreation, citizenship, holistic health, culture and artistic expression, as well as access to computer education. By 2009, the Shade and Fresh Water Network had 55 projects throughout Brazil that work with more than 3,000 children and teenagers. The network is coordinated through a national committee that meets regularly to evaluate the progress of individual projects and the network as a whole. The Shade and Fresh Water project was designed to respond to the deep historical and economic problems of Brazil and to embody a Methodist understanding of the gospel.
A Igreja Metodista deu uma definição assim.
Our church made a decision that to be a Methodist means we are to be a blessing. Shade and Fresh Water is a good way of being a blessing.
Brazil's problems are rooted in the history of a wealthy elite that does not respond to the needs of its people. Whether it was the gold, diamonds, and sugar of the colonial period, or the meat, soybeans, coffee, or iron ore of today, the people who work long hours to produce Brazil's wealth reap few of its benefits. Starting in the 1950s, Brazil went through a process of rapid urbanization. 2/3 of the rural population moved to the cities in one generation. Today, Brazil has a higher urban population than the United States. This rapid exodus created enormous problems. Rural migrants were left without adequate housing or sanitation, and had little access to schools or jobs. Parents leave their children at home to care for themselves, while they work long hours to make ends meet. By the 1980s, hundreds of thousands of street children were in the city centers. As they became a nuisance, death squads began exterminating thousands each year to clean up the streets. Because of that, new laws were passed and voluntary organizations worked to offer a different future. Today, fewer children and teenagers sleep on the streets, but drugs and crime have become the great challenge. Drug gangs control many poor neighborhoods.
A violência está grande, né?
When my children leave home, I'm always concerned what can happen to them. There are so many problems with drugs and violence.
The underdeveloped cities of the Northeast have a further problem. Their beautiful beaches attract foreign tourists, making Brazil the country with the second largest number of children and teenagers involved in prostitution. Brazilian Methodists see these problems in the context of their Christian heritage. 300 years ago, England began its industrialization process, much like Brazil today. It too faced massive social problems. Miserable living conditions, child labor, and alcoholism were rampant. John Wesley started the Methodist movement because he was distraught by the material and spiritual decadence. He wanted to reform the nation, especially the church, and spread biblical sanctity over the land because he saw the love of God and love of neighbor connected to the problems of society. His evangelism captured the imagination of the poor because it called him to a spirituality of action. The Methodist vision of the holistic gospel saw conversion leading to disciple study groups and social action. Wesley thought that living the Christian faith was building a movement of Christians that acted as if the world were their parish. Today, many Brazilians see the same connection between their social reality and the call to mission.
Como podemos anunciar o evangelho?
How can we announce the gospel without taking into account the social reality? Children need to feel they are important. They are citizens and need to see their potential for their family, their community, and why not for the nation as well.
Eu acredito que pela proposta
Shade and Fresh Water is a way of living the holistic gospel. There are so many families that are not well structured. The project provides care for the children. It helps them develop character, grow spiritually, and learn what it means to be a responsible citizen. Shade and Fresh Water is a blessing that God placed in the hands of the Methodist Church.
Para mim, o Sombra Fresca é você pegar toda a teoria bíblica.
Shade and Fresh Water is a project that enables us to put what we have learned in the Bible into practice. To talk about love is easy, but to love itself is difficult. To talk about serving is easy, but to serve itself is more difficult. This is a place where we stop just theorizing and get involved in practice.
A gente vê essas crianças chegando aqui.
Many times, children arrive here like little frightened animals that have been abused. They don't want us to get close or to touch them. Through love, they begin to open up and allow us to touch their lives. Many want to change the world and be involved in the church. Some who could barely read now speak and read the Bible in front of the church.
Quando ela começou no projeto,
We had a young boy who was quite involved in drug trafficking. He was away from home all day, being what you call a little airplane.
ele ficava o dia
He was carrying drugs for dealers because he was underage and could not be punished. His mother was desperate and asked us for help. Ever since he came here, he doesn't want to leave the project. We got him to go back to school. He has left the world of drugs, and his mother's so happy that she comes every week to help us with the cleaning.
na vida do filho dela.
O projeto na minha vida foi importante
The
porque
project was important to my life because I was involved with friends that took me in a bad direction. I was going around with guys that offered me drugs. Now I am with people that want to play soccer and ask me if I am working. Now I respect my parents a lot more. Really, I was doing a lot of bad things. If I hadn't gotten involved in the project, I would probably be living in the street or selling or using drugs. Yeah, the project really changed my life.
o projeto mudou minha vida.
How you can help. The problems of children and teenagers in Brazil are bigger than the Brazilian Methodist Church can solve. You can become part of this ministry. You can pray for the Brazilian children and the Methodist volunteers that are involved in Shade and Fresh Water. You can come as a volunteer. Each year, the Shade and Fresh Water Network receives many individual volunteers and work teams. Your life will be touched if you come and give of your time and talents. Love is a universal language that touches and transforms our hearts. Communication through words helps, but the power of presence transforms giver and receiver alike. You can contribute to the Shade and Fresh Water Advance Special. To maintain a strong national network requires funds that are currently not available to the Shade and Freshwater Network. You can help them produce new materials, provide training, and supply local projects through your contribution.
Então nós louvamos a Deus pela liderança.
In 2010, Shade and Freshwater completed 10 years of ministry. We are proud of the dedication of all those who have contributed to this important work. This program is changing the lives of many young people, and we want more of our churches to become part of this network.
Eu quero lhe dizer que isso é pra você, o menino Jesus que traz